The secret truth that you are God. Now, this secret truth has been hidden from us for millennia. And unlike the mainstream idea of God that limits your power, the idea that you are God, the truth that you are God, has the capacity to unlock a power deep within you. And the truth is that the idea that human beings are divine has been hidden throughout the ages, and sometimes actually explicitly said. I mean, if you take a look at some mystical systems like Gnosticism, we talk a lot about that on my channel, that say you are God. Then you have systems like Neoplatonism, Advaita, Vedanta, and even things like Theosophy and Hermeticism and Taoism. We're going to be talking a lot about how these different systems discuss this. But really what we're diving into is what precisely it means when we say that you are God, how it affects your life, and why this is hidden from you. This is information that you need to know, because we talk a lot about you being God on my channel, but I think that it often leads to a lot of confusion. So here we're going to clear this up and really reveal exactly what this means and how it affects your life. Now, as we do so, I'm going to be reading some quotes from Story Waters from medium.com. Now, I like Story Waters from the some things that I've read, like right here it says, no religion, consciousness creates reality. I like that. Very, very cool. So if you enjoy some of the quotes that I read today from Story Waters, go give them a follow and support them over on medium.com. And I love the title here. It says, you are God, get over it. And what I really like about that title is that once we realize that we're God, there's so much that we can begin to accomplish and begin to transform, not only in our lives, but collectively the world. So it's at this point where it's like, come on, humanity. Realize you're God. We're way past the sell-by date here. We're way past the time necessary to realize this. Humanity should have realized this a long time ago. Now, this quote that from Storywater says, despite how we see ourselves as singular, our individuality is a state of consciousness. Now, this universal, eternal state of consciousness is what religion calls God. But whereas religion has set the divine up as being both separate from and above us, we retain the power to realize that we are this infinite level of consciousness. Now, this is what I really want to stress. There's a couple different ideas of God. First, and this is important for defining what God is, what it means to be God, and why most people don't know that they're God, why this is hidden. Now, there's a couple different ways of understanding God. The mainstream idea of understanding God, if you go down to your church and walk into a sermon, they're going to tell you that God is a being that is separate from you, above you, created you, and that you need to be subservient to or worship or ask for forgiveness, etc. Now, of course, this idea of God is absolutely false. When we say that you are God, it's not this idea of God. This idea of a creator God is absolutely false. Now, there's this other idea of God as being an eternal consciousness or an eternal mind that is exploring itself. And this is true. This is what God is. However, we must be very careful how this is interpreted, because it can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. And some people interpret that as meaning that our individuality is an illusion. And that's not actually 100% true. It's that we are both one and many at the same time. We are both individuals and a unity simultaneously. And we're going to be talking about how this is possible, because this isn't anything that we have to believe in irrationally. We can understand this through reason, how we are a unity and a multiplicity simultaneously, and what this has to do with us as God. Now, Storywater says, to be mortal isn't to be fallen or less than. Mortality is not a mistake. It is the only thing that eternal consciousness, the immortal, desires. We each came here to experience being individuated and mortal. There are infinite diverse forms for consciousness to experience. This is an important part to hammer home, because then you have a lot of people who think that the material world is something that needs to be escaped, something that we need to transcend, etc. Now, this is a very complex, look, reality is complex. At some point, yes, it's possible to transcend physical existence, where we will be able to create our own modes of experience. This is the phase of reality that we call planetary independence or holos independence, when we as a collective are able to establish our own sub-universe and be able to establish our own independent existence there without relying on the so-called physical universe. But that's beyond the scope of what we're talking about today. What we're talking about today is the idea that you are God. And what I want to emphasize here, and that Story Waters points out and is absolutely right, that being human is not a mistake, and that it is something that we as the eternal mind desire to experience. So reality is God. I don't like using the term God. I prefer using the term the absolute, because God comes with a lot of baggage, but that's what most people understand. Most people use this word. God is coming to know itself through its various transformations. Now, what existence is ultimately at base, okay? We have to remember, look, I grew up in a strict Christian household. I have religious trauma syndrome. My life has been about exploring truth, finding truth, and being as rational and lucid as possible. So the things that we talk about are not things that should be taken on belief or on faith or anything like that. This is all stuff that we can know rationally and logically. Now, when we understand reality, we have to ask, if we're God, well, what is reality? What is existence? And we're going to talk about how we can understand this and know this through the mathematical nature of reality. We can understand what we are, where we are, why we are here. We can understand what God or the absolute is. We can understand how we are that and individuals simultaneously, and why we're going through this process. That's what I'm going to explore that. And this is information that you really need to know. You need to know this if you want to have not only a lucid life, to walk clearly with knowledge of what existence is, but also to have the best life possible. Because you can't have the best life possible if you don't know what reality actually is. You're going to be living in an illusion. Just like when you're asleep and you have a dream, when you realize you're dreaming, you can make much better choices in the dream. Now, the thing is that this information has been trying to, because this information has been attempted to be transmitted to humanity in many different ways. We talk about Gnosticism a lot on my channel. And in Gnosticism, it teaches that you aren't a body, but you're actually a human soul, and that you are divine. And you realize this through gnosis, or self-knowledge. By looking within, by realizing you are divine, you realize that you are actually a piece of the divine light of all reality and all creation, that you are spark, and together we form that mind of God. You have the system of Advaita Vedanta in Hinduism that teaches that the individual self, that the individual is an eternal self known as the Atman, and the eternal Atman, the eternal self, must realize by looking within and coming to self-knowledge that it is Brahman, and Brahman means all reality, absolutely everything. So reality and existence is a task of Atman, the self, the eternal self, to realize that it is Brahman. In Gnosticism, it is for the divine self to look within and realize and have gnosis and knowledge that it is a spark of the pleroma, or the divine light, or the fullness, or the all, or everything. Even in Taoism is a lot different. Their concept of God, they don't really have a concept of God, but rather a connective energy that connects everything together. And it's more of a pantheistic system. Now you have also the philosophy of Hermeticism that teaches the universe is a reflection of the divine mind, and we are all reflections and pieces and parts of that divine mind. And you have Neoplatonism that also says that reality all emanates from the one and permeates all things and is all things, and we are all manifestations and permutations of the one. And this goes back even further. You can find things discussing this in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I've done videos on my channel on the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I think check out my video called Quantum Mechanics Proves Ancient Secret Knowledge, where we talk about how this was discussed in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, where the god of creation, Atum, says, I am one divided, seeing myself in multiplicity. Here are my transformations. I'm paraphrasing, but essentially I am one, I divide myself, and I'm exploring myself in my diversity and my transformations, and then I will eventually become one again. So this information has been transmitted a lot throughout history, but it's usually in mysticism and mystical schools. It's not the everyday understanding of what God is or what existence is. And this is very empowering information. There are people who do understand this information, but those who are in control of the world, those who have a lot of power and a lot of influence, generally don't like this information being out there. And they look at themselves as sort of like the good shepherds that, oh, well, humanity is not ready for this information, so we're the good shepherds. We're going to lead them like a bunch of sheep. Well, fuck that. We're not a bunch of sheep that need to be led around. We are divine, and our divinity is our birthright, and we should all have access to our divinity to be able to unlock our true power and live fulfilling lives and not just consumerist, capitalist, doing nothing but wallowing in vapid entertainment daily, but rather being and celebrating our divinity and our diversity. Now, this is what's been talked about in different faiths and different religions, etc. But how do we know this from a rational perspective? How can we know this from a mathematical perspective? How can we know this from a logical perspective? And so we can understand that, look, this is a reality. Using reason, we can understand that this is a mathematical reality. Now, mathematics is not something that humans invented. Mathematics is an intrinsic part of reality. Now, what I mean by that is that we can understand the formal aspect of existence to be mathematical. And this manifests as frequency, because frequency is an entirely mathematical concept. So we can understand this as being a reality of frequency, but also a reality of mathematics. But this isn't dead abstract mathematics like you understand at school, but rather this is a reality of living mathematics. And what I mean by that is all the experiences that you have around you are constrained by the formal laws of mathematics. Everything operates according to the laws of mathematics. Nothing violates the laws of mathematics, which of course are the laws of reason. Mathematics is an instantiation or an expression of reason. Now, but that's not to say we have to be very, very careful to remember that that doesn't mean this is a dead reality, that this is a mechanistic reality, etc. Because there's a whole nother aspect to reality, and that is the experience that we have as living beings. We are mathematical entities that are alive, beings of frequencies that have hopes, dreams, pleasures, pains, etc. A lot of people don't realize that. Even some people who understand reality to be mathematical don't take the experience of reality, of what it is like to be that. And one must understand the intuitive aspect and the experiential aspect of existence, where we are a living organism exploring ourselves. And the reason for being, for existing, is twofold. One is to have knowledge of what one is and what reality is, and two is to experience existence and to take pleasure in the ride of life that we're all going through together. So enjoying life and having knowledge are the aspects of existence, or is the purpose of existence. That's what we're here to do. We're here to grow, learn, understand, and take pleasure in the experience of life and have meaningful experiences and cultivate meaningful experiences together and increase the quality of life. And these things go hand in hand, because the more that we know about reality, the better of a quality of life that we can have with each other. So how and why does reality exist? Reality exists. We can understand this in a lot of different ways, but I'm going to explain it in the quickest way and the most simple way. There are more detailed ways to explain it, but I'm going to, like I said, we're always strapped for time, so I'm going to do this in the quickest way possible. The reason that mathematical law can exist is because, rationally speaking, if we have all the numbers in existence, all right, if you imagine having a collection of all numbers, that means you have both positive and negative numbers. If you have both positive and negative numbers, this equates to zero. So reality is a system of nothingness that is a fullness. So nothingness is not empty, but nothingness is full. The reason why nothingness is not empty, but rather full, is because mathematically speaking, zero can contain all information as long as all positive information is also paired with negative information. So this positive and negative energy does not destroy itself, but exists together in a state that balances to nothingness or balances to zero. So we have existence that can exist logically. Existence must exist, and it exists logically for a number of reasons, but we can understand it in the most simple terms because it is equivalent to zero, because it is equivalent to nothingness, and you can't stop nothing from existing. It has to exist. Its existence is mandatory. Now, there's more to this than that, but this is one way to understand it. So reality is equivalent mathematically to zero, to nothingness, and frequency is a mathematical concept, so this gets manifest as frequency. Thus, frequencies can exist. Now, this is not a dead, inert existence, but rather a living reality of motion. The reason why it's a living reality of motion is because existence is exploring all its compossible states, meaning since reality is an evolving, transforming system of reason, rationally speaking, it's exploring all the possible states that it can take on. It has to explore all the possible states that it can take on because there's nothing to prevent it. It's a reality of reason that's exploring all possible states. And this is how movement arises. Movement, motion, and life exists because it is rationally possible. There's nothing within logic that prevents it from occurring. It's possible for it to occur. And this is going to all connect to how we know we are God, etc. You have to lay out the mathematical groundwork to be able to get there. So we are this system that's in motion, and not only is it in motion, but it has a qualitative aspect to it. A qualitative aspect to it means that qualia exists. Qualia are just units of experience. What this means is that there is experience. Now, what that means is that reality isn't just formal mathematics. And what I mean by formal mathematics is that it's not just the abstract law, but there's an experience that comes with it. Now, that means that you can have hopes, pleasures, pains, you can see colors, etc. And the reason why this is possible is because there's nothing to prevent logically the existence of qualia as long as it's constrained by the laws of mathematics. So experience itself is logical. It can logically exist as long as it formally obeys the laws of the laws of mathematics. So as long as you have the laws of mathematics constraining qualia, then it's perfectly logical for it to exist. And since it can exist, it must exist. So you have the laws of mathematics that exist, the frequencies of mathematics that exist, that all balance to zero, balance to nothingness. You have this nothingness that is a fullness, that's in motion as it explores all its valid and compossible states. And there's an experience associated with it because those experiences are constrained by the logical and rational laws that form its patterns that it takes. And so what arises from all this is a living mind. You have a living mind because that's all the ingredients that you need for a living mind. You have laws that are in motion and are evolving, and these laws that are in motion and evolving are all experiential. So what this means is that the fundamental stuff or substance of existence is living, rational, mathematical mind that is qualitatively experiential, and this is a subjectivity. So mind is not something that evolves from the brain. Mind is fundamental and necessary. It's the ground of existence. So this you could call God. You could call this, I don't like calling it God. I like calling it the absolute, this evolving mathematical subjective mind. And that is what we are. Now, here's the important thing. This evolving mind has the ability to individuate itself or to multiply itself in diversity because it has the potential or the capacity for multiplication or diversity. And let me explain why that is real quick. I'm going to do this very, very, very quickly because we have so much we need to talk about and we're already strapped for time. So real quick, I want to bring up the flower of life because it's a really great pattern for understanding this. Okay, so this flower of life, notice it's nothing but circles. That's it. It's just circles, only circles, nothing but circles. There's nothing else here but circles. Now, you can see that all these circles, you can see them, they form one pattern. Now, these circles are all different from each other. Why are these circles different? Well, because they have a different location. That's what differentiates them. Imagine that all these circles did not have the same location. Imagine that they all had the same or identical locations at the origin. If all these circles had the same location, it would seem like that there's just one circle. If you're looking at all these circles right now, you can only tell them apart because they have different locations. If they all had the same location, it would appear to be one circle. All right, so putting all this together, by Leibniz's law, the law of identity, we know identity of indiscernibles. We know, sorry, it's the identity of indiscernibles. Law of identity is a different law. But Leibniz's law, we know that when a multiplicity of things are identical, functionally they are the same thing. So what does this mean? It means that reality as a living system has the capacity for unity and multiplicity. But the multiplicity never vanishes. It just enters into a state in which it is functionally one. So you notice you have this multiplicity. Even if all these circles were to have the same location, it would be as though there was one circle. And functionally, it would be there was one circle. But really, it has the capacity to have diversity. If you give them all unique locations again, they have diversity is introduced. So the reason why I'm talking about this is because this is how reality operates in terms of a living mind. I want you to imagine each one of these circles represents a living mind, a living subjectivity, a living self. Okay, so when there is no difference, it is as though there is one. So at this point, it is as though there is one mind. This one mind then decides to explore itself in diversity and multiplicity through its transformations by introducing difference. When difference is introduced, now you have a multiplicity. So you can imagine this system. Imagine these circles with the ability to collapse into a unity and expand into a multiplicity. Collapse into a unity and expand into a multiplicity. This is how we are one mind exploring itself in its diversity. It is a mathematical component of the system to be able to explore itself in diversity and multiplicity. And reality is this process. Reality is a cyclical process. The one mind, which is also a multiplicity of minds, explores itself in diversity and multiplicity cyclically. So at the Big Bang, it was a unity, but the Big Bang gives rise to a diversity. And then at the end of time, it'll collapse back into a unity or an identity. And then there will be a new Big Bang, and there'll be a new diversity and multiplicity, etc. So we go through this process of identity and unity to particularization, multiplicity, and diversity. So much I could talk about here, but we're just doing this as quickly as possible to understand what we are, where we are, why we are here, and what it means to be God. So what does it mean to be God? Well, when we all existed in this state of unity, we are God. We are the absolute. We are a subjectivity. We then express ourselves in a multiplicity. So you can imagine each one of these circles representing a different mind. Me, you, your neighbor, your friend, your brother, your sister, your mother, etc. All these circles represent a different mind. Now, all these minds are eternal. They never disappear. They never go away, but they have the capacity to enter into different states, a state of unity or a state of multiplicity. So this is how we can be one and many. We are an identity that is exploring ourselves, or a universality that is exploring ourselves in multiplicity and diversity. Now, I want you to notice there is a second way that we are both one and many at the same time, and that is, notice there are many, many, many different circles, but this many different circles form one pattern, the overall pattern of the flower of life, okay? So this forms a network mind in which every node or every mind is a single node in this network mind. So now there's a different way we are both one and many. We're both one and many because we are individual minds. We're many because we are multiplicity, but we exist as nodes within one overall pattern, which is the overall network. So this is important to understanding, and remember, this pattern is a very simplistic pattern, but it's very, very good for understanding these complex ideas. So notice all the different ways that you have unity and multiplicity and diversity. These independent minds can collapse into an identity and also particularize into a multiplicity. Even when it particularizes into a multiplicity, it still forms an overall single pattern. So we are a united single mind that has the capacity for particularization or difference or multiplicity. Currently, that's what we're doing. We're exploring ourselves in our diversity and multiplication. And we also form a singular network mind, which is us working together as the absolute with the knowledge that we are the absolute. When we begin to realize what we are, it's like these nodes coming online. That's the consciousness of God. That's the consciousness of God coming online. When you realize that this is what you are, when you realize that you are the absolute and I am the absolute and we are the absolute, exploring ourselves in diversity, and we begin to work together, synchronized as nodes of the singular absolute network, we are literally the consciousness of God coming to self-realization of what we are. So you have the capacity right now to reach God consciousness through this realization, but you really have to understand what it means. You really, like, just blindly believing what I say is not what I want. And that doesn't work. You have to really understand what this means, do the work yourself, look internally. Remember, it's know thyself, not believe what some person says about yourself. I'm just trying to give you like a kickstart or ignite the fire or give that little nudge so that you can begin this journey yourself, start looking within and doing the work within to have this realization. But once you have this realization, when you realize that you are the absolute, and these are the different nodes of the absolute coming online. And this is why it's so important, because we can begin to build a world that reflects that and create a planetary civilization that's working together to increase the quality of life for every individual and the world. This is and the collective. This is why we want to establish a teleocracy, a teleocratic system that is a purpose-driven society for increasing the quality of life of every individual and the collective. And it requires this absolute consciousness to begin to come online, because you require that working together in synchronicity with the knowledge of what we are. So it's important to understand this. Now, real quick, I want to read a couple more quotes from Living Waters, because this is going to clear up some misconceptions that a lot of people have, because Living Waters, no, Story Waters. Sorry, my Christian upbringing is sneaking in there. Living Waters is some weird Christian idea from Christianity. Where did that go? Oh, it's right over here. Okay, so the idea, again, that Storywater says that to be mortal isn't to be fallen or less than. Mortality is not a mistake. It's the only thing that the eternal consciousness, the immortal, desires, which came here to experience being individuated and mortal. So being here is, we are here to experience ourselves in our multiplicity and in our diversity. Being here is not a bad thing. Being here is a great thing. It's like the code generating a video game world and then getting to put itself in the game as a character and being able to explore itself. Like, it should be fun. That's the point. What we're doing here should be fun. It should be exciting. It should be beautiful. It should be wonderful. The only reason why it isn't is because you have assholes who are making this world into a terrible state. But this is why we need to realize what we are. Because some people might say, you know, how come we don't know this? And this is the idea, why this was hidden from you. Well, the truth is that, first of all, most people who even have an idea of this don't understand it completely. And so they have a very distorted understanding of what reality is. Like I said before, they look at themselves as a weird good shepherds, that like humans aren't ready to understand this information. But they have a very distorted understanding of what this is. So that's one reason why it's not really understood. But we also, when we did this, when we multiplied ourselves in diversity through the potentiality being actualized in the system that has that capacity, when that occurred, we did so and wiped our memories. Why? Because if we remembered that we were God and the absolute, well, we already know everything. So it would be, let me put it this way. It would be like if you beat the same game in an infinite number of times. That game would be boring as hell. Like, it would be torturous to play that game. So if you beat a game an infinite number of times, the only way to enjoy it again would be to wipe your memory of it. So we wiped our memories, so to speak, voluntarily to be able to experience ourselves in multiplicity and have the joy of doing that. So some people might think, well, if that's the case, what's the point of remembering now? Well, the point is that we can remember such that we are gaining that knowledge of what we are while still being in a multiplicity and a diversity, so we can begin to construct a better world. Meaning, it doesn't defeat the purpose to remember, because in the act of remembering, we're able to construct a better and better game. It's part of the thrill of the game to come to remembrance again. In other words, we forgot so that we can remember. I forget what the quote was by Aleister Crowley, but it's a beautiful quote says that I was divided for love's sake to experience unity again. I have butchered that quote, but basically what Crowley is saying was that, go look it up if you want. It's a beautiful quote. Crowley is saying that the one mind divided itself, and that pain of division is nothing because it gets to experience the love of coming to unity again. So essentially, we forgot what we are so we can experience the thrill of coming to remember what we are so we can create a better world. And so basically my channel is like, hey, remember, come on, it's time. Let's play the game. Let's have a good time. We're done with the survival phase. We need to now step into the thriving stage. Like, this can be done, and it's very, very frustrating that it's taking humanity this long. Like, honestly, it's annoying, to be quite honest. It's pretty obvious. I mean, it's very, very obvious. It's like we live in a house of mirrors, and no one's understanding that they're looking at their own reflections. Everyone's taking their reflections to be someone else, and they're all like trying to kill each other, when it's like, hey, that's just yourself. You know, we're here to enjoy ourselves in our diversity and multiplicity. And that's why it's absolutely disgusting when you see everyone's rights being taken away, women's rights being taken away, trans rights being taken away. It's absolutely disgusting when, hey, we are here to enjoy and learn from each other and express ourselves in a way that is fulfilling to each of us, and learn from each other and cultivate meaningful experience. In other words, we're here to celebrate and learn from our diversity, not try and subjugate others or strip away the rights of others or eliminate others because of their so-called otherness. We're supposed to celebrate this diversity. So anyway, this further quote says, another quote from Storywaters say, you are infinitely free consciousness, and the only devil or evil is fear of ourselves. No devil to demonize, no savior to save you, no religion. Be free by unashamedly being yourself. And I love that. That goes hand in hand with what I was just saying. Look at all the religious leaders and whatnot that are trying to, say, demonize trans people, or trying to demonize so many different aspects of reality, ways of expressing yourself, trying to subjugate women. And that's all bullshit. There's no devil to demonize, no savior to save you, no religion. Be free by unashamedly being yourself. Great quote by Storywaters. Absolutely agree. We're here to be ourselves unashamedly. And look how beautifully trans people do that. Trans people have so much of my respect. They are some of the strongest, most fearless, most brave, most incredible people that exist. They go through so much shit, and they are incredibly strong, and they will always have my support. Storywaters continues here. There's another quote that says, the one self, or the one consciousness, refers to the self that arises from the totality of all consciousness in existence. All existence occurs within its perception. Human existence is the navigation of an individuated focus through the totality of its perception. Now, here's a misconception that I want to correct real quick, and I think a lot of people have this misconception. And I think Storywaters, I don't know everything about Storywaters. I just read a couple of their articles, so I can't say for sure what they believe. But here's a misconception I think that Storywaters may have. But if they want to believe that, that's great. That's their belief. But I think a lot of people have this, and I want to bring this up. Is I think some people believe that there is a one mind and one consciousness that is just one mind. Remember, we don't talk about just one mind. We talk about a one mind that has the capacity for multiplicity and singularity. It's this. Okay, so what I mean by that is, if you look at the flower of life again, because it's a really great descriptor. So if you look at the flower of life, if you have these multiplicity of circles, they can either exist as one circle by collapsing to identity and eliminating difference, or expanding to multiplicity. You could imagine them going to the same location or expanding to multiplicity. And we're just using location as a metaphor by introducing difference, not literally. But location can be a difference, but it's not necessarily the difference that occurs. But anyway, some people believe that the one consciousness or the one mind would be just one circle. If you were, see, this is a multiplicity of circles. So a multiplicity of minds that have the capacity to be an identity or a multiplicity and form one network. It's this dynamic system that has many different transformations and many patterns. A lot of people believe that it would be just one circle. And then within this one circle, it kind of starts to partition itself off. And people believe that it partitions itself off through the material world. So basically, that physicality and physical bodies are what individuate us. So some people believe that there is just one mind, that through physical bodies, this one mind experiences the illusion of being separate. And so there is no eternal or enduring self. There is just the one mind, and physicality is how the one mind experiences itself as though it had different perspectives. This is not my position. This is not our position. This is a very important difference. Our position is that reality is a multiplicity of individual eternal minds that have the capacity to be one or many. So even without the physical world, you can imagine these as being individual eternal selves, individual eternal minds, individual beings of frequency, without there even being in a physical world yet. Then what the physical world is allows us a environment to have bodies to interact with each other in. So they are the avatars for our minds to control, to be able to have the experience of the physical world and interaction. So the physical world is not necessary for an illusion of diversity. Rather, the physical world is an environment where particularized individuated minds can connect to have that environment to experience together. So do you see, there's a very important difference, okay? We don't believe in an external creator God that created us. That doesn't exist. And nor is our position that reality is just one single mind that then forms the physical world, and then we experience the illusion of separateness in that physical world. And then when we die, we just sort of get absorbed back into the oneness. That's not our position. Rather, our position is that we are eternal individual subjectivities that have the capacity to experience reality through synchronization as a unity, as one mind, but can also exist as a multiplicity. Now, I know that this is a lot, but I really want to get this out there, because a lot of people come in and say, well, what do you mean by you are God and we are God, etc.? So this is the idea. We are the mind that has individuated itself, and once we realize this, we can obtain absolute consciousness. When we obtain absolute consciousness, it is the realization that we are these nodes within the absolute, which is us. The absolute is what we are, because the overall pattern is nothing but the individual circles that make up that pattern, and we can begin to construct the world with that knowledge and start to enjoy life. Like that's what, ultimately realize what you are, where you are, why you are here, and then human beings can just, it's real simple. Stop killing each other and enjoy life. Not just enjoy life, but acquire knowledge, of course, too. Acquiring knowledge is what will allow us to create a better life. But it's just, the thing is that, some people think that my channel is like so far out or so crazy or whatever, when really these ideas are so obvious. Like, look how crazy the world is. You have people trying to eliminate other groups of people, absolutely subjugating women just because they don't wear a piece of cloth or whatever. And I'm being very careful with my words because of the YouTube algorithm, etc. But I think you know what I mean. Look at all the crazy insanity in the world that's going on. People killing each other because of what some old book says. or what some politician says or whatever. Worrying about who has what between their legs. Who gives a fuck? We are all eternal minds. We're beings of frequency. This whole obsession of what people look like and what they do, you know, as long as everything is, of course, consensual and safe and all that. We are in a reality where we are experiencing and expressing each other, expressing and growing and learning together in our transformations. And once we have this knowledge, not only can we create a better world collectively together, but we can increase the quality of our own lives because we realize what is important. And we realize how to cultivate a better existence and realize that we can begin to access more elements of ourselves. We start to make the unconscious conscious. And that has real world practical effects, like starting to confront addictions that we may have, or very unhealthy ways of behaving that we may have, or relationship problems that we may have, or gaining abilities such as willpower to help us in our work environment, etc. All this has real world practical examples as well, because you begin to unlock these different aspects of yourself as you look within and make the unconscious conscious. Hey, there is so much more about this. Check out the videos on my channel for more information. By the way, we're having a secret video right after this. Today's secret video is The Mind, Reason, and Free Will Did Not Evolve, as we explore the mathematical nature of reality. So if you support on Patreon, you'll get access to all those secret videos, and you'll be able to be a part of that. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who does support, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, Maria, Joel, Fairies of Venus, and Fashida, and everyone else. And you can also support by hitting the join button on YouTube right below this video.